Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Payment Genes podcast series, Voices in Payments. I'm your host, Diederik Klopper, and in this podcast series, we will talk about the recent developments in the payment industry. Today, we are joined by Vinay Srivastav, and he's the head of sales Americas at Rapid. Rapid has built the largest local payments network, and its fintech as a service platform is the fastest way to integrate fintech and payment capabilities into your application. With Vinay, we talk all about payments, how COVID-19 affected them, and globalization while being hyper-localized. Hi everybody and welcome to the Payment Genes podcast series, Voices in Payments. I'm your host, Diederik Klopper, and today we are joined by the head of sales Americas for Rapid, Vinay Srivastav. Vinay, a warm welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and love what Payment Genes is doing for our industry and the industry in whole. So thanks for having me.
More than welcome, more than welcome. Hey, Vinay, you're a seasoned payment professional, Bank of America, First Data, and currently Rapid. The first question I always start off with is, I never met somebody who woke up one day and said, I want to be in payments. How did you stumble into payments?
That's I can see that. It's a long story. I started way back when in '97. I'm 20 years plus right in the industry, and I was in the operational unit of Bank of America. And I really didn't know, as a young man, I didn't know what the bank did. So I was like, let me just bounce around to different units to understand what the bank does. And so I was in the business banking sector, personal asset management, really trying to understand what the bank does, and ended up just learning that a bank is truly a credit and treasury shop, right? That's the core business.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the merchant services division, in a telephone sales unit, and I just really enjoyed it, and had a bit of success there. And payments wasn't cool back then. We were like selling these units that sat on a desk, and you'd swipe a credit card, and they'd spit out an authorization and approval, and that would be the end of the story. Didn't have the diversification that we see, the innovation that we see today. But I really took to it, and really just developed a passion for it, and it continued over the years to be more specialty. And I continued to work, being on the west coast of the United States in the Silicon Valley area. I drifted toward the tech sector, and servicing that sector. Saw the first iteration of the internet and e-commerce boom and bust, and then was part of the second that became more stable, and the success we see today. So just working through the industry, working through financial institutions, and gravitated toward payments, and stuck with it, and here I am.
Here we are, indeed.
Here we
Hey,
are.
Rapid, of course, a global payments network, fintech as a service. Can you tell us a bit, for those who don't know Rapid yet, what it's all about?
Um, so Rapid, Rapid was started in 2015, and I think our overall premise, which is a very simple one. I think people tend to overcomplicate things to a degree, and I think our perspective is, let's simplify that. But our premise is that the payments infrastructure in the world is a hard thing to navigate at the end of the day. You have to be able to understand, especially if you're a multinational company trying to grow your global reach. You really have to understand the compliance nature, and nuances of different countries and different regions of the world, and how both collection and disbursement work across those ecosystems in terms of compliance. The collection and disbursement rails themselves are hard to tap into, and further, they're disparate, right? They're not harmonized. So a user experience on the front end, the moving of that transaction, the recording of that transaction, settlement of that transaction, could be burdensome for front end technical users down to back end controllers and accounting folks that need to account for those things.
Especially
And
if
then,
it's both cash and online. Then,
especially if it's both cash and online, any payments, right? We're not talking about just credit card payments; those might be the most harmonized, but everything else is rather disparate. Um, and then having a hyper local understanding of the market. And by that, I mean, what are the popular payment methods? And more importantly, in today's environment, what are the emerging payment methods? Is it real-time schemes? Is it the rise of e-wallets in various regions? Is cash, is cash still a big thing in your perspective market? Understanding this at a local level, and being able to deliver that type of knowledge, that type of product, and that type of compliance is really the premise that Rapid is built on, and being able to do it seamlessly, in a single platform with harmonized reporting, to make it easy for integration and production for the client, and really the end user of that client as well. That's what we strive to do at Rapid.
Yeah, so it's really assisting companies in the growth across the globe. In that sense as well, what are, yeah, some of the main issues that merchants are facing that are expanding across borders? You already mentioned a few: compliance. What are the key elements that they're stumbling on?
Um, when you look at some of the challenges, it's really the core challenge, I would say, is probably how do I tap into the ecosystem and understand how my end user, my customer wants to pay. How do I, take that payment live? How do I make it part of my payments ecosystem? A merchant tells us, our ability to grow is dependent on our payment platform and the amount of payments that we can make available. But it's not just the amount; it's what are the predominant payment forms? Is it credit card? Is it cash collection? In Mexico, it might be cash collection. In Singapore, depending on the use case, transaction size, it might be e-wallet, like the Grab wallet. Um, in Europe, based on a B2B use case or a vendor payment, it could be SEPA, direct debit. So there are a multitude of ways to pay and be paid, and it's a very tough thing for a customer that's based in one area of the world to understand, again, the compliance complexity, and how do I integrate into these localized payment methods and what are the most popular. And that's really where the biggest challenges we see, and we try to help clients solve those very issues.
Yeah, and of course, currently we're living in strange times with the COVID-19 outbreaks. That also means for a lot of companies that they are currently serving a target market that they didn't use to serve before. That can either mean selling, all of a sudden started to sell online, or experience unprecedented growth within their current segments. What are some of the key questions that those merchants should be asking when expanding to new countries? Because they perhaps have a clear understanding of how their current client base wants to pay, but what are some of the key questions that they should be asking their payment facilitators when experiencing that growth or internationalization?
So when you look at how a customer should rely on their payment provider, a customer really needs to see their payments provider as a thought leader and expert in the area, right? The payments provider being localized in a region, the customer has to use them as consultants, right? Um, the payments provider needs to provide the customer what are the optimal payment methods in region? How do I integrate to those? What is the user experience like? The payments provider has to focus on the end user, the customer's end user, and providing the customer the detail on what enabling a certain payment in a region will look like and feel like for the end user. They have to be able to, tell them what authorization rates look like. Are they going to enable a certain payment and they're going to have a certain level of abandonment? Or are they going to enable a certain payment and have a certain level of success? What does that success look like?
Yeah.
So
And I think
these are all
we've
the
both
things.
seen examples of websites where you have a list of 15 alternative payment methods next to the traditional ones. In my eyes, that's also not the perfect setup. So how do you find the balance there? Because you mentioned hyper localized. I can imagine as well it vastly differs from country to country. How can you set that optimum setup?
Yeah, it's really use case dependent, right? So you really have to, more than ever, where the way we look at it is being very consultative to the customer, really understanding the use case, the transaction, who's using the transaction. We really have gone to focusing on the end user, and by that I mean the customer's end user. Is it a broker dealer who is trying to move, a large sum of money to get funds onto a platform, or is it a last mile company where the end user is doing a transaction that might be €2, $5? Um, the way that you solution those two things are totally different, right? You're not going to solution uh, a last mile company with wire, right?
Yeah.
You're going to suggest a highly malleable uh, form of payment that can be quickly built in a recurring model or subscription model or something of that nature. you know, Credit card, e-wallet, something that fits there. And in the B2B sector, in the industrials, these guys are moving large transactions. So you look at legacy systems, and they're trying to move away from the legacy system. So, you know, what does the modernized technology in terms of payments in region look like? Is it virtual accounts? Is it, bank transfer? Is it bank redirect? Is it, a wire built into the platform? There are numerous ways to solution clients. Everything has to be looked at per client, per transaction, and per user. So looking at those things and really understanding where the client is trying to optimize, who the client's customer is, and what those transactions look like. Once you understand those things, you can point the client in the proper direction to get the largest conversion and adaption. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, you serve clients at both ends of the spectrum, so from very small up to the large ones. How do you facilitate that on one platform? Because yeah, I can as well imagine that it takes a really specialized approach to serve one part of the market. But how can you? Yeah, Rapid clearly has found a way to serve both.
We have, and I think that again, our view is being what we call hyper local, and really building into a country or region's ecosystem in terms of the payment rails. When you look at those rails, in the majority of cases, those rails are bidirectional. A lot of companies choose to be on one side of the rail or the other. I want to specialize in disbursements, payouts. I
Yeah,
want to specialize in collections. And that's a good choice, right? Because it allows them to really specialize. Our perspective is, um, because of the challenges of the world, and we all know what those are. Our rails are bi-directional, and when you look at that, you really have the ability to do some unique things there, because if you understand what collections are coming in, perhaps you have the ability to settle those a little quicker. And then from there, if you understand what's coming in, perhaps you have the ability to harmonize the disbursement against that, because right, this
yeah,
is the key to cash flow. This is the key to working capital, and really the rapid value proposition fits into the client's needs around cash flow and working capital and being able to service both sides of the equation. But the other thing is that the rails are bidirectional. So why not be on both sides of the equation if you can create an optimal customer experience?
yeah. Exactly. And the information, the insights that you gather on one side of the rail, indeed provides valuable insights for the other side. If you see how people want to pay, then there's a good chance you can also see how they want to pay out to work.
That's exactly right. That was a point I was trying to make, but that's
Yeah,
you spot on. When you understand what is coming in, and you have visibility to what is going out, you really have the ability to harmonize again that cash flow, right? That working capital
yeah,
for the client. There's companies that have spent a good amount of time building a T0 type of settlement, right? When you look at, Intuit comes to mind, Clover, Square. These are
yeah.
these are offerings that they've spent a lot of time building. When we look at our infrastructure being, 200, 250 people now with Corta, we've been able to do some of that very quickly because we do have both sides of the rail. So, our ability to be nimble behind those customers' needs have really accelerated, I think, some of the value proposition when it comes to harmonizing that type of cash flow for the customer.
Yeah, exactly. You shortly touched on Corta, of course, the acquisition that was just finalized. Congratulations on that. And I think a great addition to the product portfolio that you currently have, specialized on the credit card side. Any other developments that we have in the foreseeable future?
Well, Corta is amazing. Obviously, I have a passion for the merchant service, the card acquiring world. So to see that happen, to see our CEO and team members execute on that is so fantastic. Having direct connection in Europe to the association's payment rails, auth platform, all of these things are very key. So we're very excited. We recently announced our full stack capability, which means all payment methods in terms of collection and disbursement for Mexico and India.
In India.
We did that in Brazil, yeah, and we did that in Brazil earlier in the year. Singapore, we did that. I believe that was earlier in this year as well. I think you'll continue to see that, right? As the real-time payment rails and other types of innovation happen in the payment front, we are in region and we're right on top of those things and we examine them very closely. So I think what you'll continue to see from Rapid is enabling all of the innovation behind payments for the customers that want to consume those innovations. Not everybody's going to consume everything. But when we continue to see these big hubs of the world, Brazil, Mexico, Singapore, Europe, India, and then China, right, as well. When we continue to see these big hubs move to frictionless, digitized, more mobilized commerce, we have to be there. And so that means us having full stack capabilities in those countries. And then I think that's something that we'll continue to strive for.
Yeah, something that pops to mind. Two of the markets that you just mentioned, Brazil and India, are of course as well two markets where WhatsApp had launched their peer-to-peer payments with the regulatory bodies not fully cooperating in that sense. Is that something as well that you guys are looking into, the peer-to-peer payments, or is it something that you guys are following or worried about, or perhaps that opens up a few doors for you?
Peer-to-peer payments, in my mind, is an incredible complex value proposition. There are a few companies in the world that do it very, very well, and they're the dominant players. And we all know who those are, right? The Western Unions of the world,
Yeah.
the RIAs, etc. Um, and then there are people that are obviously there are companies and firms who are looking to get into it and understand it because there's such a revenue stream behind it. There's tremendous amount of money that moves across the world globally. It's a complex value proposition though. The compliance and licensing, the diligence needed has to be at the forefront of any build out. We take compliance very seriously here, right? Our regional head of compliance is in the APAC region, and every region has its own compliance head, as well as compliance associates with a very large compliance operations team as well that we have. So we are looking at it. We hope to enable the right players with our rails if they should want to do business with Rapid. But compliance is at the forefront of that, and we have to make sure that the folks we engage with and even ourselves can carry the right compliance burden to make peer-to-peer happen. But to long-winded question to a very simple answer, absolutely. We look at peer-to-peer remittance very seriously. We look at how to enable those. They're often lower value, high velocity type of transactions. We look how to enable those and how to put the rails in place to enable them optimally. So it's very much in the forefront of what we look at.
Yeah. Another thing that was recently announced was the Apple acquisition of MobiWave. We shortly talked about it pre-recording, but yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Amazing. Look, I'm familiar with Apple to a large degree in terms of my history of working, and I know MobiWave very well because I looked at their value offering very much, very closely. When you look at the notion, and a simple notion of turning a mobile device into a payment terminal, um, these are the things we need to be doing and doing for our merchants out there. We have to be able to have whether it be a small mom and pop, right, or a restaurant looking to be nimble in terms of bringing a device to the table for checkout. We have to be able to optimize the hardware that's used for these transactions. And the next logical step is obviously using something that everybody has, or a large percent of the population has, to be a payment terminal, to make payments
Yeah.
more seamless, to make them more frictionless, to make them more accessible. um, and I think that when you look at Apple, this is their vision. uh, they're very, that company, they think everything through. So I don't think you're going to see them jump to do anything. You're going to see something very well thought out. But it's an exciting development. And I think that, some of the other SMB players that serve that space
Watch the back.
they better up their value proposition. I won't say what you said. I'll say they better up their value proposition. But yeah, to me, it's tremendously exciting. I'm happy for both those teams.
Yeah, uh, out of interest, could this also offer an opportunity for you guys? Because, for instance, if you take a use case for an African country where quite a lot of money remittances is going on, lots of people unbanked, but do have the possession of a cell phone. Um, could the combination of the POS now by Apple with the network that you guys have in place offer some opportunities there?
I think absolutely. When you look at Rapid right now, for you and I, we play predominantly in what we would deem the card not present, right? E-commerce space, right? This is what we're doing, where we're developing technology to further help the digital and mobile footprint of customers, and then realize payments that are not traditional, right? How do we let people that don't have a credit card pay by a preferred mean, whether that be bank transfer, bank redirect, Boleto in Brazil, or other things like that. We're digitizing these payment forms for folks living in the card not present
Yeah,
e-commerce world. But what you said really resonates with us, because how do you then port that technology into hardware? How do you allow what has traditionally only accepted credit card, right? That's the reality of hardware, is it all has only accepted credit card. How do you allow a piece of hardware, and in this particular case, a mobile phone, right, when the technology gets there, to be able to accept other forms of payment, or tap and go, right,
yeah,
move money between two mobile devices. And I think that when you look at our APIs, we are enabled for retail transactions. We have to um, further productize. You have to productize before you can monetize, but we have to further productize that. But we're a young company. We're in 2015. We just started going to market hard in 2018. And so we're still building. But I think that is an absolute area. When you look at our product group, these guys are always thinking that, us as a sales group and a solutions group have to provide that market feedback. But yeah, I think that's a huge area for us, and one we're going to need to go into in the near future.
now I think that is well one of the main advantages of the setup that you have, that you guys are so flexible. You can tailor to various needs in the market. I think that's really cool.
It is, but you have to also do it right. Again,
Exactly.
one thing that we really
Not get
started.
distracted.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think whatever we do, um, the one area that we really started focusing on, I'll say again, is the end user experience. The end user experience has to be optimal for our
Yeah.
customers, because that's what's going to drive optimization and growth. The two key things that the decision makers always look at, right, when they're making decisions, and then security falls right into that,
Yeah.
but optimization and growth. And so we really have to do it right. Like we can't just say this is a good area to go here, we're going to pop in there.
Yeah.
We need to examine the ecosystem and build to the end user experience.
All right. Hey, we can't finish off this podcast without, yeah, your guys are an international company expanding across borders, helping companies expand across borders, which of course now is, yeah, not as normal as it was before. What are you guys noticing about, yeah, the whole impact of COVID-19, how companies are transgressing borders, and yeah, what do you think as well will happen in the future in that regard?
Well, it's been a tremendous impact. How companies are, I think that companies continue to drive their digital and mobile footprint, right? I think that to me, as I've heard people say, and I agree with, COVID is is not necessarily a change agent, but an accelerant to change. And I think companies, and Rapid is positioned to do this for companies, but I think companies want to continue to diversify their payments ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so to do that is a difficult task, right? Again, going into compliance, the collection and disbursement rails, and being very hyper local. It's tough when you're based in one particular geo to understand what a whole different region, how they behave and act. And the desire now that retail has been, let's just say, it's been shrunk a little bit, retail, the drive to e-commerce and card not present in digitized payment methods is growing, and we see that in the statistics, right? So over the past few months, we've had as much growth, if not more, in e-com than we've had in the last 10 years. Well, this was happening regardless. And now, because of COVID, there's an accelerant. So how does a customer understand, you know, how people in Singapore like to pay? What are the compliance things necessary? But not only Singapore, they see customer growth in Singapore, they see Malaysia, they see Brazil, they see Mexico, they see India. How do they understand those things? And these are the challenges that we see, and we see them across various industries, not just what you and I would think would resonate, like social media or digital commerce, or ad tech, things like that. No, it's beyond that. It's even the industrials, petroleum companies that have innovation divisions that want to set up marketplaces, your traditional broker dealers. How do you get money onto the platform and off the platform in
Yeah.
a more harmonized, digitized way? And so, this is what we're seeing. It's the measure of opportunity is large. A lot of companies are not just holding the line and saying, let's just kind of survive. It's, let's get our innovation teams fired up and start understanding how do we break into markets. And then you need a payments company that is there, right? Local, in market, to understand the market, to understand the optimal payment rails, to understand the compliance. So these are the things we're seeing. These are the opportunities. And this is probably why we're fairly well positioned to service those customers looking to expand cross border, because we are in market, right? We take the compliance pieces very seriously. We're built into the local rails. We're not just like transporting cross border, cross border, cross border. We're built
Yeah.
into the local markets and enabling that commerce. And then we're able to guide, whether you're a broker dealer, moving very large sum of money, to a last mile company or a gig economy company doing lower value transactions with high velocity. We understand the ecosystem, and then what the gaps might be in that ecosystem, and then how to guide a customer to create an optimal payments ecosystem, payment system within their business to capture those revenues or optimize that type of interaction with their customer base.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well that guidance can really help the clients in making the decision because, especially in these uncertain times, it really takes a lot of guts in order to make the step to cross borders and to open new markets. And then having the right partner there can really help you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you don't want to jump into something and then it breaks, and then you have to fix it, and then it breaks, you have to fix it, right? You want to make the right decision. The leap of faith is exactly right, but leap of faith is always better with a bunch of data behind it.
Exactly.
So, leap of faith is better with a bunch of data behind it, and a partner, a company that can be a partner, right? Or you
Yeah.
should be a partner to your customer base in helping them understand the localized environments, and how to obviously get into those environments and make your payments ecosystem work.
Yeah. Hey, then, yeah, circling back a bit, once again to COVID, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
something that I've seen quite recently as well is that, of course, had especially senior management, they're tasked with setting the strategy, thinking long term. Um, Talk a bit about crisis management. Unfortunately, everybody had to deal with it in the last couple of months. In your perspective, as senior management, how much should you shift your focus from long term to short term? How can you make sure that that things that are ad hoc currently have to be solved are solved in the best possible way, while still thinking about the strategic implications of everything that's happening?
I think that's a great question. For me as a senior manager, I first think about people, because as much as we live in fintech technology and all that stuff, behind all of this is people. The customers are real people. They have real world challenges. They have families. They're in an environment that is challenging, that is different, and they're facing those headwinds. And then the folks on my side, our people, are people. I mean,
Yeah,
they're facing these same challenges, right? It's you and me are the same.
yeah,
We're going through this thing together. And so, the first thing is how do we make sure people are taken care of, right? The change in work environment. Are people working from home? And if they are, what are the distractions that are around that? Do they need support? How does our human resources team properly support them and keep them engaged? That's the first thing that I think of, because without people, we're not going to be here, right? We're
yeah.
not having this discussion. And then the second thing behind that is communication, training. How do people learn? How do they work in a startup like ours, right? Which we're Series C, so you probably deem us a little bit more mature than some of the early stage guys. But how do we keep our culture intact now that we're not in the and we were a big office environment prior to this, where I sat in the same office with our head of product, so
Yeah.
understanding the product or influencing him as much as I could, but I don't know that I'm any in real
Make
influence.
a
But
subtle suggestion here and there.
understanding and doing those things was second nature to us, right? Yeah, I'm like, hey, we need this. Can you? He's like, hey, man, go back to your desk. But
Leave me to it.
I sat in the same office with my GM, my CMO, my regional head of marketing, my head of solutions, my head of product. This type of collaborative environment, how do you replicate that in a
Yeah,
crisis mode? Like, how do you, and so I just designed a global sales training, and I looked at the tools we use, right? So obviously we use these we're on Zoom today, so you know we use these telecommunication tools within, and video conference. Within that, there's breakout groups and things like that. How do we employ those things? How do we drive our communication? Some people learn better in an office environment where they can be collaborative. Some do fine on their own. They're huge self starters and they can look at modules and things like that and learn. So my thing is, understanding somebody's work environment, what they're going through. Number two, how do we communicate? How do we train? How do we guide our folks? How do we teach them? This global payments ecosystem, I just have two new guys, is massive. How do I teach them? How do I cross pollinate them to understand what our guy in India is going through and what his customers experiences are to our guy in EMEA, what he's going through, what you see in the ecosystem. So these are the big challenges. And then third to that is you touched on it, keeping our core business intact, continuing to drive the stability of the product, the growth of the product, and the culture, right? How do we get data from the field into the hands of product, into the hands of R&D, keeping that business intact, growing it to keep up with the innovation that, that you and I see every day. You talk to people every day. We just had this
Yeah.
conversation, right? You talk to people every day about the innovation that happens. How do we keep up with that? So these are the things that in a pandemic really change the way you think about the business and how you lead the business. And I think us as senior leaders, these are the things that we think about and drive toward every day.
Yeah, but one thing you mentioned that struck a nerve, and I think it's super interesting. Is you mentioned how do you get the data and then process it? Of course, you guys get data from so many different sources, so many different systems. How do you bundle that into one platform? This is, of course, the holy grail of everything that's payments and IT related. But how do you bundle all that data and get valuable insights in that? Is it something you guys are struggling with, or do you have a system that just works?
I think right now we when you look at the data that comes in, we do look at the data at a granular level, and right now most of the data is truncated and delivered for consumption by the customer, right?
Hmm.
We focus a lot on our back office portal, which is the touch point of the customer to that data. And so a lot of focus has been there and optimizing that. So that looks harmonized for a customer, whether they're doing cash collection in Mexico or they're doing e-wallet collections in Singapore or
Yeah.
Paytm collections in India. That looks harmonized for them on the back end. And so a lot of effort and development has been there. Now, to your point, there's further data behind the transaction that needs to be aggregated. We do look at some of that because we're launching Rapid Protect, which is our security product. So obviously, transactional data has to be fed into that machine
Yeah.
to enable that to go right. That's the key. It's learning and adjusting based on the transactional data that comes in. And then further, I think that we have to do things with the data that help our clients aggregate that data, understand that data, and as a sales force, you want to take that data at a quarterly business review level and share it with the customer. So these are all things that we're doing. I would say that our energy has been in the back office portal. Our energy has been building the Rapid Protect product, and now we have to go beyond that to provide valuable insights, to your point, to our customers around what that data is telling us and what it's telling them.
Yeah, indeed. So interesting times ahead.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's never a dull moment. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Luckily, luckily. Hey Vinay, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I think some lovely and valuable insights, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, Joy, hosting you.
D, I'll tell you, man, this is great. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. Obviously, I know a few guys on your side, and we've had some great conversation. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing for the industry. I think that there's a lot of information out there, and getting perspective is harder than ever, right? Because we're not going to
Yep.
conventions and things like that, right? I'm not going to see your
Money
money
2020 just
2020.
got
Yeah,
cancelled,
yeah,
so
exactly. So
yeah,
I'm
we
not
have
going to
to find
see
another
you.
way.
I'm not going to see, and I don't plan on getting on a plane anytime soon. I'll tell you that. No, no,
We'll keep it over
no
Zoom.
offense to our air travel partners. I'm kind of a conservative guy, as you know, but I really appreciate this type of information. I think folks that are in the industry like me love to hear perspectives from our colleagues around the world, whether that be fellow colleague or competitor. That doesn't matter. It's good to hear everybody's perspective, and cheers to what you guys are doing. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we want to just elevate the entire payment value chain. So one step at a time, and this one was a giant leap. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Take care, man.
All right,
All
take
right.
care. The Voices in Payments podcast is an initiative launched by Payment Genes, aimed at positively impacting the payments community by educating and connecting the market with vertical-specific industry expertise. We as Payment Genes empower the industry by focusing on the fundamentals for business growth. We achieve this by providing industry-leading payments recruitment, business and data strategy consulting services. Check out paymentgenes.com for more info and please follow us on social media for more jobs, company updates, industry insights and more.